And we are going to go straight into Focus Africa for lack of time, and we're talking about the peace deal collapse.
Now, in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, more than 400 civilians have been killed as fighting escalates between government forces and the Rwanda-backed M23 rebel group. Now, this surge comes despite a U.S.-mediated peace agreement that was signed last week, now under severe threat. Tens of thousands have been displaced, and key towns like Uvira has fallen under rebel control, exposing the human cost and fragility of security in the mineral-rich East. The crisis extends beyond the DRC, affecting the Great Lakes region and offering lessons for Africa, including Nigeria. Now, failed peace agreements erode trust, they worsen humanitarian crisis, and they jeopardize regional stability. Understanding why deals fail and collapse and how enforcement mechanisms can work is crucial for policymakers and leaders across the continent.
So to help us understand that, we are joined by Brian Reuben, Executive Chairman, the 16th Council, London, UK. Brian brings expertise to this conversation. Brian, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's begin with the collapse. First off, why do you think this collapse has happened currently?
Yeah, it's a very unfortunate situation. I did say that what we're witnessing in Eastern Congo is not just a sudden collapse of peace. This is the predictable failure of a ceasefire that lacked enforcement. See, the M23 moved into Uvira because the deal that was meant to stop the fighting would never impose real costs for violations. There were no security guarantees, no automatic consequences, and crucially, no binding inclusion on the armed actors themselves. The US brokered a political agreement, basically, not a security settlement. So when it was breached, there was no enforcement shock, only diplomatic condemnation. And the result is what we're now seeing. Territories are changing hands, civilians are fleeing into Burundi, and a crisis being managed rather than resolved. So until regional leverage is translated into real deterrence, and armed groups are constrained or absorbed politically, this isn't going to be the last offensive. It's just going to be the latest one.
So Reuben, I hear you there. You said that the real reason was not attended to, hence this peace deal cannot work. So what exactly is at the center of the conflict? What needs to be addressed?
Okay, you need to deal with... so the thing is, there has to be consequences for breaching the deal. And that does not exist right now. There is no such thing. Okay, so until actors like Rwanda and the M23, until there are real deterrents, there has to be consequences for breaking the deal. The regional powers, for example, need to be able to genuinely support a peace effort. You see, when people don't genuinely support a peace effort, it is because there are benefits for not doing that. See, so there has to be real commitment, and the only way that can happen is if there are consequences. Take, for instance, in the past, when this issue was largely contained, there were sanctions. There were such impositions that encouraged actors to support the peace process. That is what is lacking. It is enforcement. It's not there, right? That must be good. And you see, the M23 themselves must be able to, they must find themselves within the framework. See, this is the reason why it's not working. And until that happens, like I said, it's going to just be the latest, not the final.
Let's talk about the significance of Rwanda here in this escalation and the M23 rebels, right? What are the regional implications of the role that Rwanda and M23 plays in this escalation?
Okay, so no armed group of this scale operates in isolation. M23 has its own leadership and incentives, but it is also shaped by regional power dynamics, especially the post-terrorists. So the key issue is that they are not acting alone. See, they have supporters. And even though Rwanda continues to deny that. There is an overwhelming evidence that the M23 receives support from Rwanda. So the key issue is not whether Rwanda, has influence. It really does, and that influence can be used to, to support the peace effort. And if there is any regional act with the greatest influence on M23, it is clearly Rwanda.
Those are very, very heavy allegations and saying that. Yeah, go ahead. I think we lost you for a second there. You say that Rwanda is clearly Rwanda and the role that they play, right? So let's look at it regionally. Rwanda, DRC, South Africa, and of course all the mediators. Then, if you were to enforce this peace deal and transparency with the peace deal, if Rwanda is playing such a critical role and it's now tearing apart, what then will now be? What's that last ingredient to make it stick?
There are three things: enforceable alliance with automatic consequences.
Automatic consequences.
Regional security guarantees that close border escape routes, and real geopolitical inclusion at the local level. If you have this, all right, the crisis can be contained. And without those ceasefires don't end wars. They simply schedule the next round. And we're saying that Rwanda has the influence, really, the leverage to be able to bring M23, to contain M23 because they surely listen to them.
What about the UN? What are they supposed to do now that we have this breakdown? Do they have any responsibility?
Of course, UN has already done something. The ceasefire, the peacekeeping mission has been extended. And they are calling for peace, they are calling for people to return, to talk. So the first thing is to try to bring all the parties involved, all right, and ensure that the peacekeeping mission, is strengthened, So those are the key things that the UN has to do. You have to try to bring all the different stakeholders back to negotiation table. There has to be consequences. We have to go beyond diplomatic treasure. There has to be real consequences. And I'm sure right now that talks are happening at the background. I'm sure that some conversations are taking place that may not be open. But that's where it starts. The peacekeeping have been extended. Conversations should continue. And there has to be the regional powers has to be willing to commit to lasting peace, and the UN can help make that happen.
To see how this is played out, right, in this period, should the AU also be culpable as well, as well as the governing regional blocks of that region, as it regards regional and geopolitics? Do you think that AU and those regional governing blocks have a part to play in the de-escalation, escalation of the crisis?
Absolutely. AU definitely has a very key role to play. Rwanda is a member of the AU. Same goes with all of the other regional actors we're talking about. So Rwanda, for example, responds to cost, not appeals. We have to take note of that. And pressure has to translate into real consequences. There has to be consequences for not fully supporting the peace effort. So there's a role that the AU can play. It's part of those regional efforts that can help strengthen the situation and bring lasting peace. But as I did say, without targeted sanctions, conditions, security, cooperation, reputational damage, behavior cannot change. But if these things are put in place, all right, we can see real changes. If it remains rhetorical, the current posture is likely to just continue holding.
I hear you there. Rhetorical it does seem to be. Brian, thank you very much for joining us in this session here for Focus Africa. We'll continue to monitor the situation in the DRC. Hopefully there should be lasting peace. We hope that it will be restored. And if we have any more conversation on this, we'll be sure to come to you to have you back on the show. Thank you once again, Brian.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.